This podcast is produced by The Brand is Female.
Always was, always will be. Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be.
Tanse, hello, and welcome back to the Matriarch Movement podcast. I'm your host, Shayla Olette Stonechild, and I'm very excited for today's conversation with Ashley Callingbull. She is a Cree First Nations woman from the Enoch Cree Nation in the province of Alberta, Canada. She is very devoted to her culture and to her people, and she takes pride in her Cree heritage. Not only that, but Ashley is a model, an actor, and First Nations activist who was the reigning Mrs. Universe of 2015. She's an actor on the television show Blackstone, and she was a contestant on The Amazing Race Canada in 2016. She also has graced magazine covers throughout Turtle Island. She is also a spokesperson and model for the Nike N7 organization. I'm very excited to take you on this journey of knowing a little bit more of Ashley's story, why she does the work that she does, and what her goals are for the future. Hi. I'm very excited to have Ashley Callingbull here with me today. I feel like I have known her ever since I was like 18. I think I was introduced to Ashley Callingbull's work. So it's been, I feel like 10 years since we've talked. Like it's been a minute. So Ashley, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Tanse, my name is Ashley Callingbull. I am from Treaty 6 territory. I'm from the Enoch Cree Nation in Alberta. I'm an actress, model, and motivational speaker, and I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah. And so what have you been up to? I know it's been like 10 years, but like how has this past year been for you? With the pandemic, I know you're currently in Florida.
Honestly, it was really weird because all my work is in person and I travel so much, and it feels weird that like when the whole pandemic shut everything down last March, my whole life like came to like a halt, and it was almost like unknown, like what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But luckily, like everything has basically turned virtual for me, which is totally different because I miss human connection. That's like what I thrive on, is like the energy from other people. But it's weird. Like I've done so many campaigns and I've done a lot of work surprisingly during a pandemic. And I'm really thankful for that I'm still able to do the things that I love to do. But, I'm hoping things go back to normal soon because I miss people.
I know. I'm literally in the same position. We kind of do like similar work. And so same thing. Like I'm very teaching yoga and like being in community. I love that. And not having that and going online, like you can only do so many virtual events until you're like, hey, this is like a different kind of burnt out. Yeah, so I completely agree. I'm curious, what is your sign? I'm like very curious. What is your horoscope sign?
Oh, I'm a Libra, so I always want things balanced. And it's so true because I'm one of those people, like, I want things to always be fair, and my life is always about balance. And I literally think my life is like that because say something really great will happen. I'm like, something is going to even that out. Something is going to happen to test me.
Right.
and that's how it is.
So do you believe in like karma then? Like if you do something bad, that will also come back to get you?
I definitely believe in karma. So that's why I just always try to put good vibes out there. Because I'm like, if I put good vibes out there, they're going to come back to me.
True. And like we all know you have a very big platform and you've been in the public eye ever since I've known you for like 10 years. And so what keeps you connected to your power and your truth? Because I feel like there's probably a lot of other people's opinions out there. There's a lot of lateral violence. So what are tools that you use to remain in your power?
Yeah, I've been in like the public eye for so long now, and it's honestly sad to say that I'm used to lateral violence and to people being judgmental or telling me like what kind of life I should live and telling me what kind of person I should be. And I feel like it's terrible to say that that's normal in today's society. Like regardless of what I do, I realize that over time, like I can't make everyone happy. I can't please everyone. I can only do the work that, I've been taught to do and how I've been brought up and what I know from my experiences, So I feel that like a lot of the youth that I work with, they ask me about that is like, how do you deal with the lateral violence? Because it's so prevalent. And a lot of times it's really prevalent in our own communities, like our own people trying to bring each other down just over jealousy or negativity, or they think, you're not doing it my way, so it's wrong. And I experience a lot of that. And a lot of times I need to take a break from the online world and
Yeah.
focus on the present because, I'm not back home in Alberta. Like my Muslim, he's a medicine man. So I can go and sweat. And I feel like when I'm in sweat, like I pray, I cry, I sing, and I let everything go. And here I don't have that. So if I smudge every day, like that makes me feel better instantly. And I basically put a gratitude list together of things to be grateful for in my life because there's so much negativity in the outside world. And for me, it's just like having this like positive aura where I can like really rely on that. And also like movement is medicine. As long as I'm like outside in nature or I'm breathing in the gym, like moving my body, I like disconnect from like, the online world. And I feel like once I get control of my breathing and I'm moving, it like clears my mind. And I feel like that helps my mental health a lot. And I feel like at peace, you know what I mean? Just because I'm disconnecting. And I feel like that's something that I really need a lot of the time because of my presence online or like my platform, like I experience so much from different angles. But like I said, it's sad to say that I'm used to it, but a lot of business influencers, they're not used to that.
No.
Like I've been going through this for forever, and like, so when I talk to a lot of influencers and they reach out to me, they're like, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with like the backlash or if I do something wrong? And I'm like, if you do something out of the goodness of your heart and it's coming from a good place, and like, you have to know that you can't please everyone. And that's just like the world we live in now. And I feel like a lot of people always like want something to complain about as well. And it bothers me if someone doesn't do something right according to someone else's terms, they want to cancel them, and they were doing something out of the goodness of their heart. And I'm like, why aren't our own people like lifting us up? I feel like, when one of us succeeds, it's so beautiful to see because there's going to be so many more after, instead of trying to bring them down because they did something different or they got attention for something. And, I don't like that. So I'm like, just spread the positivity. And if someone's coming negative at me, I'm like, it's not going to affect me. I've been through this game way too long. I'm like, what I learned over time is that I can't worry about things that I have no control over.
That's so
true. Because if I do, it will just tear me up inside. And I'm like, that's not worth it.
Totally. Yeah. I feel like when you have a platform, you have a bunch of pressure because as Indigenous people, we are accountable to our communities, and people may think you need to use your platform for this, you need to use it for this. And you're like, I am one person. I'm trying to also maintain like my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health while also operating a business and doing so much. And so do you have boundaries in place in your life? Because I know you are in the public eye, but you also do auditions, you do movement. Like, how do you plan out your schedule? And like, do you value something more than the other? How does that work for you? Do you have a team?
Yeah, I actually have a team, thank God. Like if I didn't have a team, I feel like it would be so hard for me to do. A lot of it though, like my lifestyle before this pandemic happened was I was probably flying like 14 flights in 7 days, like something crazy like that. So I was like exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. Now it's like, I'm glad I have the time to be grounded and kind of be in one place. But for me, like I still want to do my work because that's what I love to do. And that's what like, makes me feel fulfilled and I feel happy about it. There's lots of things that I actually say no to just because it doesn't align with like what I believe in. And I feel like a lot of organizations, companies, they always reach out and they're like, do you want to do this and do that? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be your token native that's going to diversify your company. You know what I mean? I'm like, don't use me in that way and then just be done with it. Because a lot of the companies that I work with right away, like I kind of make demands in a way where I say, if you're going to, work with me, like, it's just not going to end here. I'm like, what are you going to do to give back? What are you going to do to actually help like all the movement that I'm doing and all the work that I'm doing that's unseen, that's not online? I'm like, are you going to help these charities that I'm constantly helping? Are you going to help these kids, these women? So I'm like, you got to actually like make it matter. You know what I mean? And I feel that like a lot of companies don't want to do the work. So I'll only work with companies that want to like do the work and then keep the work going instead of it just being like, hey, it's a one-time thing. Look at us. We're so diverse with this native representative. And I'm like, no, it's not over. But yeah. And then if I didn't have like my team booking like all my gigs and whatnot for me. And like, I'm shooting, like, it's crazy that I'm still doing stuff. I just can't believe it. Like, I'm shooting a cover for a magazine next
Oh,
week. So
sweet.
I'm still doing like in-person things, but out of safety. But I just like honestly can't wait to be back in person. Like, I feel like I need that.
Well, and I think like having the authority to decide what projects you take on and what you say no to. I feel like as Indigenous people, sometimes we feel like maybe when we're starting out our career that this is the only opportunity where I get to be represented, or this is the only thing that I'll have my voice heard. And so we're so quick to hop on these opportunities. But it's like, no, is this relationship like a reciprocal relationship? And people don't see the work and the dialogue and the conversations that happen behind the scenes, because I ask the exact same questions. I'm like, this is what I want from you. Can you meet me here? If not, then go work on this. And then maybe we can come back in conversation when you've done more of the work internally. So I love that you bring that up, because I feel like social media and influencing is just so new that we're constantly learning these new dynamics. And so moving into 2021, I know you said that you want to be back in community and you're shooting a new magazine cover. What else do you have in store for the rest of the year?
There's a lot of things I legally can't say.
Oh, yeah, signed to an NDA
I like
and a
honestly
contract.
hate that, because there's so many exciting things, and I'm like, I can't wait to tell someone. I'm like, but I don't want to lose that job, you know? But honestly,
Right,
there's like,
totally.
I have a series that's coming out. Probably, I'm not sure when it's coming out, at the end of the year. I'm working on a lot of different projects, a lot of different platforms, and I feel like I've been working a long time trying to create my own foundation. That's just something that I'm really like
Mm,
gearing up towards, because like I work with a lot of different foundations and a lot of women who are at risk or in shelters, but I want to create my own, because the majority of Indigenous women in shelters are, you know, they're the majority. So I'm
mhm.
like, I'm trying to come up with my own foundation, and hopefully by the 5 year mark, I can have something ready to go in different Indigenous communities across the country. Because like growing up, I didn't have a safe place to escape to. Like, we were lucky that we went to my grandparents, but because there was no room for us at the shelter, I know what it feels like. And, you know, me and my mom, we throw a gala every year, and all the funds and everything goes back to these women in the shelters. And we actually bring the Indigenous women who are in the shelters to come for the night, and we'd get them all dressed up.
That's
And we see,
awesome.
like, you honestly get to see, like, that's their second chance at life. And not everyone gets that, especially if they're Indigenous. It's so hard for women to get back up on their feet, and especially if they have children. And
Mhm.
it's just like a safe place for them to, you know, grow again. And that's just something that's really important to me, because it's just how I was brought up. That's like the one thing that I really want to work on, regardless of like
Mhm.
everything else that I do, which is, you know, amazing. Like, that's the one thing I really want to focus on.
I love that you bring that in, because, yeah, when you are given a platform or, you know, these opportunities, it is about like, how can you share and give back to your community? And you have a direct connection to these women because you have experienced it yourself, I'm assuming. I don't know if you want to share a little bit of your childhood or your own story of why this work is so important to you.
Well, growing up, like, I was very lucky to be living with my mom and my grandparents, my cook and my mushroom. You know, I was raised really traditionally. My grandparents are a medicine man and medicine woman. So that's like the environment I grew up in till I was about 5 years old. Me and my mom, we moved away to go live with her boyfriend at the time, and he was also Indigenous. And we moved to another reserve. It was one of those situations where he was really charming, and everyone in the community thought he was so
Mm,
wonderful. But deep down, he's attacked a lot of women and a lot of children. And it
mm,
was like a big secret. So when I started first getting abused, physically and sexually abused, I was just 5. So to
wow.
me, I honestly could not understand what that meant. I didn't know if like that's what love was supposed to be, but it went on till I think about like 6, 7 years. And because of that,
Mm,
like, I had to grow up really fast. I didn't trust men. I had a lot of insecurities, and I hated myself for what was happening to me. And then having to keep secrets like that, and, you know, see my mom being abused as well. It's like I lived in fear. So when we finally did escape and there was no room for us, that scared me, because I thought, this is my chance. So we were lucky to go back to my grandparents. And that's
mm,
why it's so important to me, is because like I know what it's like to, you know, go hungry and to
yeah.
be told things over and over for years, and you start to believe that about yourself. So when I went back to my grandparents, they didn't know how to adjust to what a normal life should be like. So it took a long time, a long time.
I was going to ask first, thank you for sharing your story and that side of yourself. And I think that's an important conversation is as Indigenous people, we have intergenerational trauma is a real thing. And so I'm curious, you said it took you a very long time, but were there certain things that you did that really helped you come back into your power and into your peace?
Yeah. And, when she just said intergenerational trauma, I want to tell people also is that, my abuser, his parents were in the residential school and they ended up abusing him. And that's what they knew. And then he abused me. So I feel the full effects of it. It's something I never wanted to experience. And when I went back home to Enoch, my cookum, who's also a residential school survivor, she was like the only one person I could really talk to because she has been abused. She knows what it's like. And she told me, in order to move forward, like, I have to let go. I can't let that like hate and anger take over me. And the one thing she told me was, a lot of people were turned to drugs and alcohol when that happens. And, I saw a lot of my cousins doing the same thing, especially like at my young age. And I just didn't want that life for myself because like my abuser told me so many times, like, you're worthless. No one's going to ever care about you. You're never going to amount to anything. And I felt like I wanted to just prove myself wrong, not have that self-doubt. So my cookum told me to stay on the red road. And she said, this is where your healing is because, I had to go to court for all this and I had to go to therapy. The judge told me, Ashley's got a lot of mental health issues. She's suicidal. She's going through a lot. She needs to see a therapist. And I saw about like maybe 4 or 5 different therapists. And each time, like, I would throw something or yell at them and be like, just tell me how to be happy, And I was looking for answers in all the wrong places. And my cookum said that like our medicine and your healing is here at home in the sweat and in ceremony. She's like, this will make you feel strong. And I remember sitting in sweat one time and I was just crying and I felt like everything was just coming out and everything was letting go. And being around that, like I started to feel strong because my grandparents went through that and they had to build themselves back up. So I felt like I was just like slowly building myself back up again. And, healing takes time. I feel like even now I'm triggered by random things, but I don't let it overtake my life. And that's something that you just have to work on every single day.
Yeah, you brought up a really good point of this aspect of letting go. And it made me think of forgiveness and realizing that forgiveness is you reclaiming your power and it's clearing that channel and that energetic cord that you have with that person. And so for women out there who may be experiencing, something similar to you or abuse, what would your advice be for these women?
It's so important to talk to someone. Like, I was silenced for years. My mom was silenced for years. And I know it's so scary to use your voice, but that's your power. Your voice is your power and it can get you out. There's always going to be someone there that can understand you. And it's a situation where you're never alone. And I needed to learn that is that I'm not the only one who's been through something like this. And it's not just me and my mom against the world. There's so much help. It's just, you just have to use your voice. And that's probably the scariest part is speaking up. But once you get past that point, there's a release and you're like, okay, I can't let it have this control over me anymore.
Well, that's like a part of the healing journey, I feel, is like releasing it. And also it's like a death and rebirth of your old self and your new self. And I know you have done so much in your life. You were Miss Canada. What year was that?
Like 2010, I think. Oh my God, I'm so ancient now.
Miss Canada and the Amazing Race.
Like my old pageant days.
Yeah. So like from your healing journey, you started using your voice in a lot of different places. And so I'm curious to know, like, what has been one of your highlights in your career and also one of the challenges within your career?
Probably using my voice. What's crazy is when I went to court when I was a kid and I had to explain in like deep detail of like what happened to me with my abuser sitting there and his family was laughing at me and that killed me inside because that's my truth. and you think it's a joke. So I remember getting off that stand and I told myself, I'm never going to speak out loud ever again. I was like, I'm going to be silent for the rest of my life. And I was silent for a long time. And then I didn't realize until I started working with other youth and women who were dealing with the same things as me, is that like my voice is so powerful and it can go so far. It can either like amplify other people's voices, but then you can also experience a lot of negativity from speaking your truth. And I feel like in every aspect of my life, whether it was like using pageantry to use my voice or, you know, going on national things, it just felt like that was my power. And it was scary because, you know, you never know what kind of backlash you're going to receive or who's going to come at you. And even if you're doing things from a good place, you know, it's scary to speak out loud like that. And especially like calling out other people's crap, like calling out the government when I won my pageant. That was insane.
I remember that. That was amazing though. That was like so powerful because I feel like, I don't know if you can relate, but when I'm scared about using my voice, I call upon like my ancestors and the matriarchs and my lineage. And so when I feel like when I go to battle or when I go to use my voice, it's like I'm not just going alone. I'm going with like a lineage behind me. And when I saw that interview on TV, I was like, that's it. Like I felt like you just had like a bunch of women, matriarchs, your ancestors backing you up when you went full force. And how was that experience for you? Because I remember that interview.
Honestly, I was planning ahead in case I did win. I was like, what am I going to do to like make this, you know, bigger than it is? Because it's not just about me. Like, regardless of what position you are in your life, and if you have like some type of platform, so type of title, like use it to your full advantage. And doing this, I was thinking like, how can I, you know, keep this going? How can I make some kind of like positive effect on people? And it was during the time of the federal election. There was a lot of things that I was political about, but no one really kind of cared until like I had a national title. And when I won, I honestly did not expect that type of attention. I was just thinking, okay, yeah, I made history. I was like, but no one's going to really pay attention because I'm Indigenous. And I got attention for that. But then once I like opened my mouth, people are like, hey, you're not supposed to be political. You're not entitled to an opinion. Who do you think you are? And I'm like, I'm just speaking like all Indigenous people's truth. I'm like, I'm speaking about what's actually going on right now and what you guys keep pushing under the rug. And you know, I called out the government, and I remember I called out Stephen Harper for all his crap, and he ended up deleting the congratulatory tweet to me.
Oh, really? He was salty.
I was like, I'm so petty.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, when I experienced that, I couldn't believe it because I kept seeing my name trending at the top of like Facebook and Twitter, and Kanye West's name was under mine, and Justin Bieber's was under mine. I was like, what world am I living in? I was like, but you guys need to get on my level. I was just like laughing. I couldn't believe it. But like, I honestly, once I opened my mouth, like I had the media in the palm of my hand. I was like, and they were just listening and eating up. And that never happens because the media only decides who they want to listen to, who's important, you know, who's in the spotlight. And that's what sucks. And I told the media, I said, you know, it's sad that it took a beauty queen for you guys to listen.
For you to listen.
And I'm like, there's so many people speaking about this. I'm like, so many people who are better to speak about it. And there's people that have been going on this for years. I'm like, but now because I won this title and I'm bringing it back to the country, and I'm like, now you want to listen.
Now you're going to listen. Yeah. Now that I have a platform and a crown, you're going to listen to what I have to say.
Do you ever wonder what goes on behind the scenes of your favorite homegrown films and TV shows? Well, it's time to pop some popcorn, go behind the camera, and meet the people who are making it happen. I'm Mariska Fernandez, host of the Maple Popcorn Podcast. In this new series, you will discover exclusive interviews with Canadian icons and hear them talk about Canadian flicks and even break the fifth wall to share set anecdotes. This podcast is produced by The Brand is Female and powered by Telefilm Canada. Subscribe now on the podcast app of your choice and don't miss an episode. Stay in the know by visiting telefilm.ca/see-it-all.
Speaking of listening, there's kind of a shift happening here in Canada. You're obviously probably updated, but the findings of the 215 children of the Kamloops Indian Residential School, and I believe there's even more bodies being found. And I feel like Canada is finally waking up to the realities that exist here. And so do you have hope for our current government? Do you have hope for Canada itself? Like, where do you see this? Where do you stand?
Honestly, I feel like if anyone ever votes for a new prime minister, it's voting the lesser of the evils. and,
Yeah.
and it's like, is this our best hope? And it's sad because the government was a system that was created to destroy us, to erase us. So it's like we're constantly battling a system that doesn't want us here. It's almost like we're such a problem to deal with, you know what I mean? And there are some people that want to create change, but for me, it's like, if you're just using your words, like, where's your action? You're making broken promises. And I feel like that's something we're so used to. But now I feel like Indigenous people are really like coming together. Like, they're saying, hey, enough's enough. Like, we're going to keep flooding you with like the truth. We're going to still be here because we are. And for me, like, I feel like only our people are really going to move forward and have a better country together. Is like, for us, if we just keep like fighting the fight. But it's hard to rely on a system, and that's something that I never wanted to do. I wish like we could just have our own system and govern ourselves, but we're not even in that. We're not even in that place. And I feel like even in government, we need more space. Like, we need our own occupying the space, saying like how we're going to govern ourselves, like what we know, instead of it just being middle-aged white man. What does he know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people who are in charge of like Indigenous relations and whatnot, why aren't they Indigenous? Like, there are so many questions and so many things that need to be changed, but it's going to take so much time. But for Canada to be better, it's like, we can't rely on the system. Like, it's the people. I feel like non-Indigenous people need to understand, we are not the statistics that media like perpetuates us to be. I feel like a lot of people don't even know like the truth of Canada. Like, when I posted a video a few days ago about residential schools, about like my grandparents' experience, a lot of people didn't know, and they're Canadian, and a lot of them have competed in pageants. And I'm like, how did you not know the true history?
Yeah.
And that just boggles my mind. I'm like, if you're going to speak up like for a country that you're just in love with, I'm like, at least know what it actually stands for and what's actually happening. Because like, I feel like people don't understand, is like, oh, hey, that's history, just get over it. And I'm like, no, like, I'm still living through this. Our people are still suffering. I'm like, we have people who are living in third world conditions in our country, and then everyone else is thriving from the government, getting money thrown at them. And I'm like, how do we not have clean water? How are we still fighting for our rights on our lands? I'm like, how is this still happening? I feel like it's just a constant battle. So it's a little hard for me to be optimistic. I can be optimistic towards my people because they're using their voices more, but I'm not optimistic towards a system that was never meant for us to begin with.
And I think it brings up this concept of decolonization. You're speaking of the system of, we can't really find the answers in the same system that hurt us. And so I'm curious to know, like, do you resonate with the term decolonization, and what does that look like in your own eyes?
For me, I feel like I'm just kind of freeing myself from like a status or position that was really pushed on us as Indigenous peoples. I feel like I also have to change my thought process and like deconstruct from these like colonized ways of thinking. I feel like that's the only way that I'm going to create a new narrative for myself. And if I decolonize, like, then I can finally be who I truly am and not what people say I am.
Yeah, I made a post before. It was like, dismantle all colonial programming that told you you weren't enough.
Yeah.
Because even though like we exist, like we've all been colonized in a way. Like, even our thought processes, rooted in white supremacy. This idea of having to be perfect all the time. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. And when we are talking about decolonization, I think it's also reimagining a new future that has yet to exist. And so when you hear the word like Indigenous futurism, if you could indigenize a future, what would it look like?
There's so many different ways that you can do that. Like, instead of like not only just giving power back to our voices and changing our views on the world, but, you know, our voices can create this new narrative. Like, when I think about it, I'm like, what are our future going to look like? How can we incorporate like traditional ways and teachings into like new technology and medicine, for example, you know, using our stories and voices to create space for change. And that creates a better future, not only for us, but future generations. There's so many ways that we can intertwine old ways with new ways. And that's just something that we have to work on as people. For me, I'm like, we need our own space.
Yeah.
We need to be at the head of the table. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is bringing up like another conversation that I've been having this week is like when you start to have a platform and you start using your voice, you sometimes get like resources and opportunities, and then you start having more networks and connections. And so there's this idea of like, yes, we're Indigenous, but we also are able-bodied. We also are maybe lighter skinned. So we have like kind of these privileges of having these connections. And so I know you touch base on, you hope to create a foundation, but I'm curious to know, like, how do you support your community in tangible ways?
For like right now?
Yeah,
or
like
mean,
what
like,
do you,
for my future
or for
plans?
future, both. This is what I've been toying with in my mind. This is what I'm trying to visualize for myself of like, how can I actually give back to my community? And is this something that I exists right now, or is this like more long-term focused?
Yeah. I feel like I can always get back to my community. I'm always in touch with them, and I'm always doing stuff with the kids for the school. There's always something that like I'm reaching out to them with, which is nice. Like they just created some new arts program where it's really cool actually. It's like a digital show and you can bring all these different aspects onto it. So I feel like, you know, being a part of stuff like that, and also the summer programs that we put together is really fun. And, you know, bringing other Indigenous voices in, and if I can like create programs there, because I think one really important thing about bringing people who aren't from our reserve or who are Indigenous and have succeeded off reserve is to bring them in and to show the kids like, hey, you know, like this is possible. It doesn't have to be just someone from your community. It just goes to show like this is all across Turtle Island. Like there's success stories, because a lot of kids, like they can be told something, but I feel like they have to see success firsthand in order to like really grasp it and be like, it is within my reach. And with my future plans, like I definitely want to have a shelter in my own community. Like that would be one of the first places, just because we're also so close to the city. But it's just something that like I got to keep working on. You know, always giving back to my community is important, because you can never forget where you come from. I mean, my community has helped me out a lot in so many different aspects, and they've always been like really supportive of me. So when I'm ever home, like there's always something that I'm doing there. I feel like, and like even like speaking at the school, I feel like I've spoken at that school so many times this year too, even like virtually. So I feel like it's just I'm always there, even though I'm not, if that makes sense. I really like that, because I don't want the kids to think like, oh, Ashley left Enoch. Because a lot of people say that if you leave the reserve and find success, a lot of people will say, you're too good for your reserve.
You left
now.
us. Yeah.
Who do you think? And I'm like, you know, a lot of people can find success in their own communities, which is great. I'm like, but the things that I want to chase aren't in my community. So like, I'm obviously going to have to leave to, you know, make my dreams come true, but I can always come back.
Yeah, it's always there. And community, I think, is also like relationship. It may not necessarily, like, yes, it's your place, it's your home territory, but it's also through your relationship and having that no matter where you are in the world. But I know you've been in Florida. So how is it living in Florida? And like, I know you have dual citizenship. My goal is to like move to Hawaii, but I'm curious to know before I do, is it? Oh my God, we could
go to Hawaii. Right? Buffy St. Marie.
That's what I was just going to say. Like Buffy St. Marie is like my long-term goal. She's gonna be my best friend.
She's gonna be my best friend. We're gonna live in Hawaii together.
Literally, that is my goal.
Yeah, that's always my dream. I'm like, I want to like just live in Hawaii, live off the land. I'm like, I love how everyone's so rich in their culture there. But like, honestly, this last year, it's been really weird living in Florida, because they only closed for 1 month.
Oh, yeah.
Everything is fully function open. There's no mask mandate here. Like everything is open. So I feel like when I go home, what I'm nervous about is that even my family is quite paranoid, because they've been in this lockdown for months. So they just watch the news so much, just waiting for some good news. And if I ever tell them what I'm doing here, they're like, oh my God, aren't you so afraid? And I'm like, well, I gotta go grocery shopping. Like, I gotta do
Yeah.
something. I feel like I am scared to go back to that type of mentality in Canada, because I was surprised that Canada was so behind. I was surprised that like I got fully vaccinated here a long time ago.
Yeah.
Before like I would even be eligible in Canada. So it's nice to still be able to live my life here, but I'm ready to go home. I miss my family so much. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been waiting to be fully vaccinated so I can hug my mushroom again.
Literally.
Like those are things that I think about. I'm like, I just want to hug everybody.
Right? I know. I actually just lost my grandpa, and it was very hard because I hadn't like hugged him in a year. And I was like, this pandemic is all hitting us in different ways. And yeah, and
So sorry to hear that.
yeah, no worries. And we thrive in like community, and we go to sweats and we go to ceremonies. And I know you've brought up like your mom and your grandmother quite a few times in this conversation, and this idea of matriarchy. What does the word matriarch mean to you? And are there current matriarchs you're inspired by right now?
Matriarch to me just really means like a woman of power, a leader with a strong presence that's leaving a legacy behind. The matriarch in my family was my kukum. Now that she's not here with us, it's my mother. My kukum was a medicine woman, and she was like a really respected, strong leader in my community. And the thing I really respected about her is that she went above and beyond to always think of others before herself. And she always stood up for what she believed in. Like her voice was so powerful, and everyone always listened. It was crazy how much power she had. And she was only 5 feet tall, small woman with like this big voice, and it resonated with so many people. And whenever people talk about her now, like it makes me cry because I didn't realize how loved she was. So it's like, to me, my kukum always talked about like, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? And when I think about that, I'm like, that's a really powerful way to think, because you're not just thinking of like, what am I going to do for myself, for my future? It's like, what am I going to leave behind for the next generation, and that's something that I really respect. And I feel like that's kind of like what I live my life by now, is that, one thing that my kukum always told me is that, you never know who's watching you. She told me even when I was younger, she's like, you're a role model, whether you know it or not, because you never know who's watching.
That's
and I
so
always
true.
tell the kids, I always tell the youth that like, you're a role model, whether you know it or not. I'm like, you graduate or you do something, you find success. I'm like, someone is going to be watching and looking up to you and thinking that they can do the same thing. So, for me, it's all about leaving behind like this positivity, because you never know who you're going to affect, what kind of like positive ripple effect you're going to leave behind, who else you're going to, leave these feelings with. And then they're just going to feel like, I can do this too, So for me, like a matriarch could be so many different types of people, but it's like, for me, it's like, what's your legacy?
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's like coming back to that 7th-generation prophecy of always looking ahead and realizing like, yes, it's good to have intentions, but what is the impact behind those intentions? I'm curious to know a little bit of when you are, visualizing your legacy, are there certain ways you do that through manifestation, through journaling, through visualizing? I'm curious to know like, what is your process of leaving behind your legacy?
So I have a journal. And like I write random things in there about like how my day was, because I've been doing this since I was a little girl, and I'll look back and read some of them. I'm like, God, I'm crazy. I'm like, who talks like that? But I always noticed, like, I always made plans for myself or things that I wanted to accomplish. Like even as a young girl now, like I have a journal actually right here in front of me. I write down things that like I want to accomplish this year. Like a lot of my things, it's like year by year, because there's just so much that can change within a year. And then I also think about like my future. So for me, like I'm just always making plans and always trying to set a new goal for myself. Even if it's small, I'm like, I've succeeded, that feels good, and that can help me with the next thing. And my life is just really unpredictable. I feel like so many things get thrown at me, and a lot of things are really good, and then I could do more from that. So for me, if I ever have an opportunity, like I try to make more opportunities out of just that one, not just for myself, but for other people as well. So for me, it's like my life's just always changing, but I always make sure that I have goals set. And if it's something that I think is out of reach, I'm like, I just keep working harder for it. Or if it's like acting, experience a lot of no's, a lot of you're not this, you're not that. I'm like, well, I'm going to keep going. I'm like, no's aren't going to stop me.
Yeah. The acting industry, you definitely have to have thick skin, and you get used to, a lot of no's for a lot of different reasons. I love that you're very future focused. I feel like that is really what's going to accelerate our future, is visualizing a new future that has yet to be done. And so how can people keep in touch with you moving forward? How can people support your work?
Well, for me, like I said before, it's like, if you want to work with me, we got to be on the same page. I'm like, you got to still want to amplify like the other work that I do, or at least donate or help, because these companies or whoever wants to work with me, they usually have such a huge platform, and they have so many resources that can actually make a difference. And I want people to know that is like, don't ever try to tokenize me. And, my mainstream work will never define who I am. That's just something that's on the side that I like to do. So for me, like, if you ever want to reach me, you can just find me on my website and then email me. There's actually like so many different ways to find me on social media, but like a lot of times people will reach out to just to want to talk, or like not work related. Some people actually just want to talk, and like kids want to reach out. So a lot of times we do that through social, and then once I'm comfortable and I know it is a kid, I'll give you my mailing address, and then we actually like, I have like pen pals and stuff. So
sweet.
I find that like so fun, because it just makes me feel like there's such a stronger connection other than just, being
Social
online.
Media. Yeah. Well, and a lot of people think they have access to you like 24/7 through social media. It's a little hard to keep up to like all the DMs. You brought up some things that they can do to support you, but I'm curious to know, what would your advice be for non-Indigenous people that are wanting to support Indigenous communities?
They definitely have to do the work. They can't just jump in and think that things are okay, and that like, hey, I'm going to throw some money at you. It's okay. We're doing it from a good place. I'm like, they literally have to do the work on the companies and people that they want to work with, so they're not stepping on any toes, offending anyone, because, people are really sensitive, especially in the times that we live in now. People are even extra sensitive. And with things like really unfolding in Indigenous communities, like all this truth, it's such like a touchy time. And like, I've had friends who've reached out to me with their companies, not for work, but asking, how do I like amplify Indigenous voices? How do I do things properly?
Right.
And that's one really good thing, is to actually like reach out to Indigenous people in the community to, get different perspectives, instead of just going forth and doing your own thing and be like, okay, well, I did my job. Like, we're good. We totally stand for you and whatnot. And I'm like, no, you guys have to actually do the work. I'm like, educate yourself. There's so many different ways you can. I'm like, they have university free programs for
literally
anyone, just to teach you about our history. I'm like, there's so many different ways, so many different resources, people to read. I'm like, podcasts like this to listen to. There's just so much that you can learn. And people just really need to take that initiative instead of being lazy about it.
Yeah, that's so true. Because it's also a lot of emotional labor on us Indigenous people. It's like, if you could come to the table just knowing these few things before we begin to talk about what ways to dismantle and reconnect, then that saves me a lot of my own work. Thank you so much for your time today. And you can follow Ashley. What's your Instagram handle? Ashley Callingbull, right?
Just Ashley Callingbull, my name.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward. I would ask you about your future, but you're signed too many NDAs. So I guess I'll just watch on the gram, or like wait to see what you're up to.
Stay tuned, everyone. Just wait. And then once I announce it, we can talk all about it.
Talk all about it. Sweet. Well, thank you so much, and have a blessed day. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I would love your feedback. Follow me on Instagram at Shayla0H, at Matriarch.Movement, and don't forget to subscribe on the pod platform of your choice, and review and rate where possible. I'll be back in a week. Hi. Thank you so much for tuning in.